Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hillbilly Voodoo channel. If you're new to us, we're in the middle of building an extreme off-road wheelchair tracked vehicle type thing. If you've been following along, last time we had just finished one of our rails for the suspension. I wouldn't really call it suspension, just the rail that the track goes on. And we had to repeat and build the other side. Well, so you can see, the other side is now complete. Boy, was that ever a thing to do. The fabrication's seriously simple. The thinking part, where you have to remember that you're building it exactly the same, except different. What do you mean by that? Well, it's a mirror image. And after a whole bunch of what the hell are you doing, I finally got it all figured out. I had to cut it apart a couple times and put it back together. Just for some reason, I couldn't get my brain around it. Building a mirror image, how simple is that? But you know, sometimes you just need to go in the house and say, whatever, I'm gonna do it another day. So where's the next step here? Well, we got both of our skids, both of our tracks. Now we have to figure out how we're going to attach those skids to this frame. Well, we're obviously going to have to cut the frame off here so that our legs can hang down. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is to take that hydraulic reservoir off of there so that I can put a seat up here. Whatever kind of seat I'm going to find, I don't know. I got quite a few laying around, but I'm going to put a seat up here so that I can have an idea of where my legs are going to drop off, for one thing, and how high the seat is going to be above the frame. And that will give me an idea of how high that frame has got to be mounted off of the skids. Well, of course, we're going to have the track length and all the other things in there that's going to have to be figured out. So let's get that tank off of there and we'll go from there. I guess it's a good thing I waited till I put a seat in here to decide where I was going to chop the frame off. This is a pretty small seat. It's the back seat out of I think it's out of a Tracker or a Suzuki Sidekick or something to that effect. But anyways, it's a fairly small seat, and I figured that I was going to have to be chopping the frame off somewhere around here. But my guesstimate was pretty messed up, I guess, because I got this much more frame that I can deal with. And these mounts for that seat are almost the exact width of the frame. So I guess we'll be using that seat because it seems to fit in there pretty good. So I think what I'm going to do is cut the frame about there. Actually, no, maybe I'll cut the frame back a little bit here, because then when your legs drop down, they're not going to be whacking on this. And yeah, so I'll try to get that sawhorse jammed up underneath there so that when I forget what I'm doing and start cutting a frame, this thing doesn't fall on the ground. Got our frame whacked off here at a 45-degree angle, and I took the part that I chopped off, flipped it around, stuck it so that it's hanging down. Now, my whole thought process here is that if this is level and this is plumb, then we should be square, at least this way. After I get these two top parts welded in, then I'll bend it down till it's square and tack the two bottom parts in. I got myself a tripod for Christmas, so we're gonna set this camera up on the tripod, and if I can figure out how that works, then maybe we'll get some footage of me tacking this in place, and maybe we won't. Well, we got everything all set up here. We just rechecked the angle of our dangle, and it seems to be square, so I'm gonna fire up the welder, and hopefully this thing's gonna weld today. Well, that one's tacked pretty well, so I guess it's gonna cooperate today. That one looks right on. That looks right on. Bet you never thought you'd see me use a level, because this is kind of a first. Well, the theory is we got this in here now. Should be square this way and plumb this way. And I'm going to weld right across the top of both of these seams so that I can then bend this part down so that it'll be, well, square this way. These look like they stuck, so see what happens from here. Sometimes you might need a little bit of help sucking it in after Christmas and getting everything all square and lined up. As you can see, we're kind of, even with our cuts, we're not quite square here. So in this instance, a ratchet strap can be your best friend when trying to square something up or level something out. So just attach it there, and the other side to the points. And I don't know if you can see it too well, but we're actually pulling that piece in. Sometimes you just need a little, sometimes you need a lot. Ratchet straps are pretty good for that, even the small ones. I would like to kind of go a little bit over square. Did you hear that noise? Pulling on that. If you don't know how a ratchet strap works, well, then you probably shouldn't use it. But anyways, pulling that in, get that a little bit over square, which we got now, because it's going to spring back a little bit. And now we're going to tack it. This whole tripod thingy here is kind of neat. It's like I can do two things at once. Maybe if I could figure out how to do 3 things at once or 4 things at once, I'd get more stuff done. Here we go. We're going to tack this in place and then check and make sure we're still square. Well, that's about as square as I need it to be, so I'll do the other side and then I'll finish all the welding up. Got our stuff all finished welded up here, and it kind of almost looks like it's supposed to be like that. Well, I can tell you this much, guys. 35 years of welding, and I still probably don't know what I'm doing, but who cares? If somebody's out there criticizing your welds and telling them that they're not pretty, I've seen some seriously booger welds hold up to some really bad abuse. And I've seen some really, really pretty welds fail under the first little fart in the wind. You don't have to be a good welder. if you're a good grinder, smooth out the stuff that's ugly and pokey and is going to hurt somebody if they brush up against it. And if everything else holds together, give her. It doesn't have to be beautiful, it's just got to work. The frame all welded on and back together like that, you can tell that the front end here that's hanging down is going to be way too long. It's like, I don't know, 8 inches off the ground. But anyways, I left it that long for a reason, because now we're going to put the rims back on it and the tracks, and we're going to jam all the skids and everything into there, and we're going to start doing some measurements, and we're going to decide how much we're going to cut off of this, because we're going to come across with some tubing, and that's what our little snowmobile track skiddy things are going to mount to. So this piece here is going to determine how much ground clearance we're going to have underneath the actual bars that go across, how much our legs are going to hang down, and how high our feet are going to be off the ground. My thought is that I don't really want the height of the seat super high, because if somebody in a wheelchair does ever decide to use this, which could possibly happen in the future, I don't want it so that they're going to have to somehow leap out of their chair and land in the seat, because that's probably not too practical or feasible, or as if you're my size, it's impossible. But anyways, we're going to put some pieces back together here and start doing some measurements. And after I get all the boring parts of sticking all the things back on that I've taken off, I'll bring you back and show you what kind of measurements we're going to do and how we're going to determine the ride height and the ground clearance. Got all the pieces stuck back on here and mounted in more or less the place that I need them to be. Then we're going to take the measurement between the two tracks so we can spread out our bottom skids. Now we're going to measure to the center of these track driving lugs here. So we got, what do we got here? 30 and a half. So we're going to write that down somewhere where we're not going to lose it. How about right there? We'll write it there. 30 and 1/2. Now I'm sure in 5 years down the road I'm going to wonder what the hell is that number on there for, but right now hopefully we won't lose that part and we won't lose that number. So now we know that that skid and that skid over there have to be 30 and a half to the center. So we'll do a little bit of math here and figure some things out and cut a piece of steel that will go between those two. Now if you look, I've kind of moved everything back on the chassis. The skids have, the whole thing has moved backwards this way. I was looking around on the internet at all the different tracked vehicle chair type ideas, and they all seem to have a wheelie bar on the back. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's obviously a problem. If everybody else has got a wheelie bar on the back, people are obviously flipping over backwards, unless they're dragging racing them or something weird like that. But yeah, that's probably not a thing. So to get away from having to put a wheelie bar on the back, I'm just going to move the whole track backwards to the rear, bring the center of gravity back that way, or sorry, bring the center of gravity this way so that the front end will stay down on the ground and I won't need a wheelie bar. The only problem I can see with that is your legs are going to be hanging down right here, and your feet are going to be the first to the scene of the accident. So I'm gonna try, once I get that bar cut, I'm gonna weld it here, not to the forky thing, but to the slidey thing. Gonna weld it there, and then I'm gonna move it forward and weld it to the piece that hangs down there. It's probably not gonna be permanent, it's just gonna be there to get everything lined up and tacked into place. And I'll see how much of our feet stick out the front. Might have to put a little bit of a bumper in there or some type of little skid plate or something so you're not jamming your toes into the rocks and, like I see, being the first to the scene of the accident. Well, this will be a good part of the video to remind you that if you like this stuff and you're new to us and haven't subscribed yet, well, right now would probably be a good time to do that. And give me a thumbs up if you're into this kind of thing. And if you're not into this kind of thing, well, give me a thumbs up anyways, just cause. And share with your friends. Share with people that you might think are into these kinds of projects. And, well, maybe they'll think you're cool and give you a thumbs up. Well, with the seat on there and the tracks and all that stuff, this thing's actually looking like a thing. Hey, look, Ma, I made a thing. Well, anyways, I've measured the two seats that I sit in most in the shop here. This seat right here is 20 inches from the butt to the ground. My stool right there is 16 inches from the butt to the ground. So I figure that 18 inches from the butt to where you're going to put your feet should be probably 18 inches should be good. So that's where I'm going to cut it off at. I'm going to do that off camera because I have to take all this thing apart now so that I can mount those skids on a piece of steel that goes across, and all that is probably going to be really, really boring. And nobody wants to watch boring stuff. So again, like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and I'll see you next time.